Okay, Monday, October 16th. Monday, October 16th, 8:30 a.m. PC.
This is our dude.
Oh,
She's on Zoom.
okay. I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Do we need to take a roll call? Yes.
Skip that.
Brumby, Donna Colton here.
East Palo Alto,
Carlos Romero.
Hillsborough,
Leslie Ragsdale from New York.
Tola Valley, Denver.
Martin Medina.
Okay, fantastic. All right, let's move on to public comment. This item is reserved for anyone who wants to speak on an item not currently on the agenda. Do we have anyone with raised hands, Nelly?
Those in the waiting room might notice that we have a little bit different format. We're in a Zoom webinar format. So if you would like to make a public comment on an item, please raise your hand and then we will call on. Yes, exactly. Call on you to speak. So this is for general public comment for items not on the agenda. Going once, going twice. Okay, no public comment.
Anyone in the room? No. Okay, we have no public comment today. So can I get an action to set the agenda and approve the consent items?
So.
Thank you very much.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Medina and a second by Romero. All those in favor? Mark,
No.
you want to have a roll call?
Paul?
Yep.
Burlingame?
Yes.
East Palo Alto?
Yes.
Hillsborough?
Aye.
Tola Valley? Denver.
Aye.
And motion.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, regular agenda. Potential revisions to cash management and investment management structure discussion. Andy.
Yeah, and incorporated into this is the discussion about changes or vote about discussions. A vote about changes to the investment policy.
Yep.
So don't wait, wait. Oh, it's still late. Oh, it's only 40 minutes, okay. I have a car to catch on the other end. All right.
We'll get you out of here.
Okay, so first context and current status. Cash balances have grown significantly in response to the financial turmoil. The Audit and Finance Committee directed staff quickly diversified to other institutions, and we added Fidelity and Schwab. Is just reminding you. We're out of compliance with our current, with the current California government code and with our investment policy. Because we're holding more than 20% of our assets in money market. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. This is a summary of where cash was on August 31. We had about $70 million in Fidelity. We've since added $10 million, but this is August 31. We have about 1 month's cash at First Republic. We have almost $60 million at Schwab, and then held at US Bank. As custodian, we have two money managers, or investment managers. So $284 million. Next slide, please. These are the areas that I would like to discuss. I want to discuss the revisions to the investment policy. I can do this. I wonder why this was here. Potential reduction in the number of institutions. Potential limitations on the amounts at each institution or manager, and implementation of an investment management with other money managers possibility. I will be looking for direction on a few things. Investment management structure, allocation of funds, limitation of funds, as I mentioned, whether we should continue our ESG investment strategy and overlay, and then direction on what you would like me, how much you want me to discuss with the board or how with the board. Okay, first, investment policy, number 19, this is an action item. And the resolution is the Audit and Finance Committee recommends that the board approve and adopt the revised investment policy. So we're just looking for you to vote on a recommendation for the board to approve the changes on consent if you approve. This, I'm sorry, is very small and I forgot my glasses, so I'm going to just pull them up here.
And I think, Andy, most of us have had to make these exact changes in our own government policy.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah, so you don't probably have to
Okay,
go too.
So the first three are ones that were mandated by new Senate bill to make changes to the California Government Code, which is then just now flowing through our investment policy. And the last two at the bottom are to expand to a couple of new investment vehicles, supranationals and asset-backed securities. And for those two types of instruments, the proposed language in the policy matches the code language, except that we put a 5% issuer limit on these investment types and the code has no issuer limit. Any questions about this? We discussed some of this last time and we can go into more depth, and I have Monique, or I've asked Monique to be on the phone here and she is,
Thank
in
you,
case,
Monique.
in case there are any questions.
Yeah.
Did we just skip from item 1 to item 2?
Item 1 encompasses item 2, so it's all related.
We could do two separate motions.
Item 1 is just a discussion item, but I do want
Public
to
comment.
leave public comment to it for item 1.
Perfect.
We're coming back to item 1 too though.
Okay, we'll do public comment for both together. We'll take them together because they're interrelated. Okay, that sounds good. All right, so Andy, anything else to add to that? Okay. All right, so we have had extensive discussion on this in the past, and really what this is cleanup to get us in compliance with the new state. Do any members of the committee have comments or anything they want to think on it? Carlos?
No, I don't.
No, you're good. Leslie, are you good?
I'm good. Feel
Okay.
well informed.
Okay, fantastic. So why don't we take these as two separate motions? Nellie, is that okay?
There's only one,
This is the only one for a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, potential revisions to cash.
I want to discuss with the meat of this discussion, there's two separate things, and maybe I didn't structure it right, is to vote on the changes to the investment policy, which is what this resolution is, and then to walk you through all the potential alternatives
On the cash management.
on the cash.
Okay, so we're taking them out of order. We're gonna take item 2 first. Okay, does any member of the public have a comment on item number 2, which is the approval of the board of directors of the revised investment policy, which is really to comply just with the new revisions per state. All right, if we don't have any public comment, or public comment, Nellie, we're good? We'll go ahead and do the motion.
I move that we recommend that the board of directors, PCE, approve and adopt the revised investment policy.
Okay, great.
Second.
Second by Medina, motion by Romero, second by Medina, maybe we have a roll call vote, please.
Burlingame,
Yes.
East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Yes.
Portola Valley. Amber,
Yes.
motion passes.
And to be clear, I'm planning to put that on consent at the.
Oh, yeah, that seems fine.
All right, so now the meat of the cash and investment management structure. Okay, so we discussed the revisions to the investment policy, reduction in the number of institutions or potential reductions, limitation on the amounts and implementation of investment management with other money managers. Okay, so currently we have Fidelity, we have First Republic Investment, which is now JP Morgan Asset Management. We have PFM Asset Management. Both of those two are held under US Bank as custodian. And then we have Schwab. The last two potential options that we're presenting, or the other two, are Camp and Chandler Asset Management. I want to walk you through. Fidelity, currently we have $71 million. Again, it's higher than that now because we transferred some more in the month of October. They have responded that they are not registered to offer investment management to government entities. So they, as an organization, they elected not to do that. So therefore, they are not in the position to help us with that side. They could continue to offer money market holdings, but that would exceed our policy and code thresholds. So our recommendation would be to eliminate them from consideration and then transfer the funds elsewhere. And again, I'm not asking for recommendations, I'm just letting you know what we're recommending at this stage. Next is First Republic Investment Management. They are our current investment manager. They manage $60 million in an actively managed fixed income portfolio. They were recently acquired by JP Morgan. JP Morgan's fees are significantly higher than what we're paying now, although they have agreed to honor the FRB fee structure. I picked the number to be consistent across these four managers at 75 million. The fees are about $117,000 a year. Their current management does not enable them to have an ESG overlay management, or at least a formalized process, but they do try to comply with our expectations, but we just don't have a way to measure and track and monitor that performance.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
So that's, so they don't have an ESG overlay, but our ESG overlay is really just like, don't buy PCE. I mean, don't buy PG&E, don't buy oil.
It is, except that we also, PFM uses Sustainalytics, and they provide a quarterly report to us that shows us all of our investments and the social responsibility and government compliance and all that along over all of our investments, even though we're really just, we're doing two things on our HG portfolio. One, we're giving specific instructions, don't invest in energy. And then broadly, don't invest in bad companies. But we don't really have a way to report on that other than through Sustainalytics, which confirms that we're not investing in bad companies, but
Right, well, and I wouldn't classify it as bad companies, because for example, Tesla's in the bad company range, and we're all driving, most people are driving Tesla here.
I'm kind of moving quickly, but bad is a bad word.
I would say, you know, I mean, yes, I would
Less
just.
desirable for investment.
No, they're not less
There's
desirable.
not less
They're
desirable
actually
investment.
Probably more desirable.
It's that they may be, it's that they may not follow
Their board structure may not be as.
diverse. They may not have, they may have as many women on their board, they may not have as many.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean they're gonna be a
minority
bad
people on their board.
investment. It just
Right.
means that if we're trying to put together first principles of, you know, that we as, our first principles are, we wanna support diversity, equity, access, inclusion, blah, 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 blah.
It's the social policy overlay,
Right,
correct? That's
They're not aligned with our
So,
preferences.
Well, they could be very closely aligned.
Right, but currently they're not.
Well, it's all degrees, so, yeah. I mean, ESG, frankly, like, they're changing the way, we should discuss this probably in a year. ESG is kind of going by the wayside because of these exact issues, which are like, you know, very nuanced and they're
Sure.
very sort of personal, like, you know, right now we're dealing with conflicts around the world and people take sides and people's opinions are sort of diverse, right? So anyway, okay, but yes, so they do not have an ESG overlay.
Yeah, and it's possible that a lot of investments would be fine for us, but what the ESG overlay does, that Sustainalytics through PFM does, allows us to monitor those and reports on companies rather than us assuming that they're good.
Well,
that
I'm
they're
sure
well-
JP Morgan also has Sustainalytics. In fact, I know they do. I mean, Sustainalytics is like, anyone can buy it. This is not some proprietary anything or anything.
so let's hold this as a note and keep going
Yeah.
because we've got a ton to get through.
Next is PFM Asset Management. They're again a current investment manager, $65 million almost.
Mhm.
They were acquired by US Bank in 2022. At 75 million, their fees are 62,500 a year, so less than half of FRB. And they're currently managing our portfolio subject to an ESG addendum using Sustainalytics for an extra fee of 0.015%, which adds $11,000 a year. Next,
So does the 62.5 include the 11,250? So 62.5 plus 11?
that's right.
Okay.
This is not working. There we go, Schwab. Schwab has proposed participation in their Wasmer Schroeder strategies. It's still Schwab Asset Management, which provides portfolio management. Their fund descriptions are very lengthy and detailed, but our reading is that they can't guarantee that investments will always comply with the code. It looks like they do right now, but they can't guarantee it because it's something like 99% or something like that will be invested in it. Their fees are very high compared to others, in excess of $250,000 for a $75 million portfolio. Chandler is another potential investment manager. When we did the RFP several years ago and selected PFM to join FRB, Chandler got second place. They're primarily focused on cash management for public agencies. They have a lot of $33+ million under management. Their fees would be about $60,000 a year, so slightly or close to, but slightly less than PFM. They have a number of clients that we know: Marine Clean Energy, City of San Mateo, City of South San Francisco. They provided references for those two. They do offer an ESG overlay through Standard & Poor metrics for an additional 0.01% a year, which would add $7,500 a year. We needed to do that. We would need to create an addendum if we decided to use their ESG overlay management. Camp, we talked about last week, is a money manager, highly rated, well-run. It competes with Leith. In the attachments I provided to you, it included a comparison. There is a comparison on this next page of Leith and Camp. They're similar in management, Camp is managed by PFM actually, but Camp hires PFM to do that management. They could hire somebody else to do it.
Well, stay there, that's an important slide. So the other really big difference here is weighted average monthly maturity is 33 days versus 251 days. So I think it was important, we noticed last time that Camp is a very short-term cash fund. So it's being actively managed within a very, very short-term band compared to Lake, which is almost a year, has probably, if it's weighted average maturity, it's got much longer duration securities. Lake, I think, compares actually more to the PFM for actively managed portfolio, and Camp is more, takes out some of the risk of the fund, if you will, by shortening up the maturity. So they're slightly different to think about in terms of what I would call the manager structure, which is how they fit together, how the pieces fit together.
Good.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna do this because
No,
it's too
that's
small. So as I see it, there's three potential options, although there are more, but three, is that we keep PFM and FRB as we have now, which is JP Morgan Chase or soon to be, and then add Camp. Second, and I'll go through each of these in slightly bit more detail. The second is to keep PFM and add Chandler, which would be to replace FRB with Chandler and add Camp. And then third is we could expand PFM's investment management and just have one investment manager and add Camp as a place to deposit liquid funds that isn't at First Republic operating. I offered a little bit of structure, although there's no magic to these numbers. This is option, the first one, that we would keep FRB and PFM, so they would be, let's say, targeted initially at $80 million, Camp at $100 million, which would be reduced by whatever surplus funds decisions are coming, which I'm assuming are gonna be somewhere between 30 and 50 million. And then we would keep basically a month's of cash in our operating account and manage it back through Camp until it got to be, this is the last point, the ongoing, is keep a Camp target of about 50 million, and then anything above, and 1 month's cash at operating account, and anything above that would be split 50-50 between PFM and FRB. The next one is Similar, PFM and Chandler, and the same mix of everything else, which is target approximately 1 month of expenses at operating account, and then target about $50 million on an ongoing basis at camp, and then 50-50 at PFM and Chandler. And then the last one is probably obvious, is to have just PFM and then targeting $50 million at camp. And then the rest would go to PFM if it was excess of the 1 month plus 50 million. Before we get your input on that,
Can you go back to the page with all three options on it?
sure,
Yeah. Or
I'll try.
whatever. Okay.
We do.
Okay, so do you want to make a recommendation or do you want to hear
I would like to hear, we do have a recommendation, but I would like to hear your input.
I'll turn over to committee members.
At first glance, without hearing the recommendation, it would seem like B would be the one that I'm leaning towards at the moment. I like adding camp. They have a much higher fee schedule, and adding Chandler.
This First Republic has an attorney.
Yeah, the fees, First Republic, the fee structure is about 117,000 versus about 60,000 for
Okay.
PFM and Chandler, and that's assuming that, and I believe them, that they can honor the fee structure that they
Yeah,
want.
they said it. Okay, thanks.
But it's still twice as much as, at 75 million, it's still twice as much.
Carlos?
I am really gonna defer to staff on this, just because I want. Well, let's see what your recommendation is, but I just want it to be easy enough for you all
Yeah.
to move money around.
Yeah.
So I'm not one, if you pick something that seems that's kind of crazy, or reducing or whatever, or we're increasing our potential to be exposed to markets, I mean.
Okay, perfect. Leslie?
I'm also inclined to follow the experts' advice. I don't love paying double in fees if it's not necessary, so I would be more inclined toward B, or even C, if C seems easier for staff to have fewer people to keep charge of, but just in terms of spending money, I'd rather not pay double the fees if not necessary for FRB.
You give your recommendation. I think we should take public comment first. Does any member of the public have a comment they'd like to share? See any hands raised? Any hand raised? You guys are all members of the public back there. You guys are. No, all right. And I'm pretty indifferent. The only thing I would add is that if we are going to add Chandler, I'd like to understand a little more about the firm and not just about the product. How long have they been in business? How many assets under management? How many clients? Where are they located? How long has the investment team been in place? I think those would be appropriate answers and data to provide when in adding a new manager. So even if we add camp on, I think on the recommendations of the full board, we need to have demonstrated that we have done due diligence on the organization, not just the investment strategy.
Okay, so we should talk about how you want to do that. Why don't
we figure out what we're gonna do
Okay.
first and then we can.
There was an attachment in there, you might not have gotten to it, but it was describing all about Chandler in the,
Yeah, that's right, okay.
well, we can go through that at some point. Okay, so,
Well, and is that current, is that off the old RFP?
no, it's current.
Okay, great, thank you.
So if we have Chandler and PFM, thank you. we're basically gonna have two acting managers.
Exactly.
I don't know whether we need that, but anyway.
Well, that's why I'll wait for them to suggest what they think is the best.
Yeah, we work well.
Go ahead.
We have two investment managers now. It's not a lot of, it's not much to do other than the fact that we have quarterly reporting from two managers versus one. This committee and the board, when we just made this decision 3 or 4 years ago, decided that we wanted to have two managers, and so I've leaned on that original input about two managers. But there's no obligation to have two managers. There are many, organizations and municipalities that are even
Yeah.
bigger than us that only have one. So, but if this committee would like to, then I think that we ought to move to Chandler for away from FRB, which is option B. And if it's one, then I think it's okay to be at PFM. But if you were asking us for a recommendation, we probably would recommend B. It's no more work to do B versus C. Except that we have reporting from two entities and have to report to you all about the mix between the two, but it's not really any more work to do one or two. And really, it's just input from this committee about whether you want two managers or one manager.
And Andy, would we do two managers because it's just diversifying the portfolio and sort of mitigating risk, right?
Yeah,
To some degree.
it doesn't, yes, that's true, except that since one manager or two, they're executing similar strategies and they're buying a bunch of different instruments anyway. Where it's not any more risk or less risk to have two managers. It's not really a diversification of risk because they're held in custodian held in, as go through a custodian independently. So, and we could trade one manager out for another and have no additional change even in the instruments, even if we change managers. So it's not really changing the risk, it's just
My
a
one,
question of philosophy more than anything else.
my one question on that is, so what like you did is you just went back to the work we did 3 years ago, whatever, and invited in Chandler. In order to comply with like our DEI policy, the question is, we're not really opening it up to anybody to say, hey, is there anybody else who wants to bid on this? Maybe a woman or minority firm that's qualified or WMB or whatever. So are you comfortable skipping that part of the process to include Chandler? Or if you want that structure with the third new manager, are you comfortable just going directly with someone we looked at 3 years ago? Or do you feel like we need to open that process and back up and invite proposals in again? And I think it's a fair question. It's just a process question. I'm probably okay with both, but we do have this policy. We are trying to be inclusive in our work, and this circumvents that a little bit. And it wasn't just 18 months ago or even a year ago, it was 3 years ago. But maybe you guys have.
Yeah, I guess the question I would have for this body is, you know, to your point, it's our philosophy as much as anything else. So I guess my question would be, why two? Let's go back to the beginning, because I wasn't here,
Well,
right?
you'll need the manager, so the third recommendation is two managers, it's CAMP and PFM. So the question is why three,
Why, well, okay, sorry, why three?
right? So, and the reason to have a third would be, and again, I'm not advocating one way or another, but the reason to have a second would be in the event that PFM was subject to catastrophic sort of, you know, they're having lived through 9/11, where I watched 3 investment management firms literally get wiped out in 15 minutes. Those are the kinds of catastrophic, horrible things that you're banking on by having a secondary firm. But given it's so liquid and it's so marketable, you mitigate a lot of the risk of needing a second manager, because you could literally just tell the custodian bank, stop trading. We're gonna hang on to this for 24 hours, 36 hours, figure out what we're gonna do next. And then make sure that they can continue to operate the business. Or give yourself time to move to it, you know, to come up with an action. Is kind of how I would. So it's really, I think given the need, this isn't like we're running a hedge fund or some crazy, you know, really complicated investment strategy. These are highly liquid, very tradable, very transactable, publicly priced, marketed every day, held in a third-party custodian. So it's really just, you know, another level of risk management that you just would have another manager to go to in the event the other one is having problems.
Okay.
That's a very tiny incremental feel good in my book. But not necessary. So it's really up to you guys, or you guys, 2 or 3.
Okay. So that, if we're going to make a recommendation to the board about this, do you believe that it needs to, I mean, thanks for the input, we're not making a decision at this meeting, because we're not asking for a vote. We will bring we're thinking we should bring a recommendation to the board, or do you think it needs a board action? And if so, does it belong on regular agenda?
Well, first of all, are you making a recommendation from 2 or? I guess the other question I would ask the committee is, if we go with 3 managers, are you comfortable just going back to what we did 3 years ago and including that manager? And do we have data on, like, you know, Kate Chandler, is a woman in business, looks like.
That's correct.
Your question basically though is should we go out to competitive bid?
Should we go to competitive bid, or are we
Basically, the question.
comfortable going back to what we did we're probably not gonna get too much different, but I just don't want people to feel criticized at some point, or someone on the board to say, well, did you competitively bid this? We need to have an answer if we don't.
So we would be, if we went out to bid, we'd be competitively bidding for a second
Yes.
asset manager.
And we would, of course, invite them to bid. But like I'm saying, we did do it 3 years ago. We didn't have our policy in place. This is a woman-owned firm. You know, they have excellent public, you know, sector clients, and, you know, their list is very strong. And great recommendations. So it's really up to you guys how you feel about that. I think we can make a case for it either way.
So if
That was fine.
staff is fine with adding Chandler, which is B, I'm fine with just adding them and not going to a full request for proposals from for a second active asset manager. You say they are a woman-owned firm.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. Okay.
Kay Chandler is,
Yes.
founded the firm in 1988.
Yeah, that's fine.
Frankly, I ran many. I worked for the city of San Diego and the county of San Diego for 15 years. They were a client of mine, both of them. And, you know, she was there 1988. I wasn't quite working there yet, but,
So when we sign on, let's say we ultimately go this direction, what's the obligation that we have for any particular asset manager? That could shift next year if we want.
Shift anytime.
We can number whenever we
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
The process would be, if we retain their services and we figure out the manager structure, retain the managers to go into the structure. And then once a year, we would review the managers. So we review their organizational stability, their performance relative to the benchmark. How are they doing with staff? Are you guys all happy? And if some big red flag comes up, you can do a search and hire a new manager and move the money again. Mhm. So, I'm just Googling in there right here. So Carlos, I think we have sort of a beginning of sort of a formulation. Leslie, do you have thoughts?
My only thought was, just in terms of giving reassurance that this, is a version of a competitive process. I feel comfortable with a search 3 years ago because we do want somebody that is stable. So you don't want somebody, say a new kid on the block that just formed last year. So if we did a search and came up with a recommendation of a female-owned firm 3 years ago, I feel good about that.
Yeah, and I will say, Leslie, that is part of the problem for women and minority-owned firms is people put very long track records on them, so they can't get their footing in. So sometimes you make accommodation to look at, say, like, this person's been running money and been investing and doing work for 20 years, but they just founded a firm last year. So sometimes in that space, we're willing to go a little shorter if there's a compelling reason to hire and give somebody who wouldn't normally have access. So, but you make a really good point. And Marty?
Yeah. If we're going forward with the
I wanna make
recommendation with B, I'm fine with that. I think at some point, when would we look at allowing a competitive bid? Because that's always good. I mean,
Yeah.
to know what those options are and to set up the criteria for that is maybe something that this committee could look into over time, over the next year, to kind of like start thinking about what it would look like if we went out to bid.
So, well, it says actually this is interesting, I'm looking on their website, the Kay Chandler founded the firm in '88, it doesn't mean, I don't see her on the executive team anymore. So my guess is maybe she's retired, so they've carried on her name, and the executive team is, their chief executive officer is Nicole Drago, woman, and then their CFO, COO, and their two co-chief investment officers. The head leadership team is frankly mainly white men. So I'm guessing the ownership structure is not woman owned. But we could find out, we could call them and just say, do you qualify for any woman, minority, anything like that?
We can find out, and then to answer your question, we could certainly do a competitive bid in the next coming up year.
Okay, two questions. One is, do you want to continue the ESG monitoring by both companies if we do go with Chandler? And second, do you believe this needs a board action to make a change if we make a change? Even if we went with C, which is keeping one manager, not adding one, do we need a board action?
I would take this
Yeah, I
to
put it
the
on
board.
consent,
I would put
but
it
I'd
on
put it on
consent.
consent.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, consent's fine.
Okay.
And I would put a notation in there that, we, part of our DEI policy is really making sure that these kind of opportunities are open to women and minority-owned firms. And so I do want to maybe state in there that we will, open it up in a year. We're going to make this move for now. And that in a year, that we think this is prudent, this is fine, we're going back on 3 years, but you would review your managers every 3 to 5 years anyway. And, we'll take, we want to take that into consideration, and we would vet. I don't think any women or minority firms bid on I think there were 6 or 7 people that bid on this last time, Andy. I don't think any of them were women or minority. But you guys, there are a lot of what I would call emerging managers in these spaces, so we might have to dig a little bit to try to, check and see if there is one, but I think that is our responsibility to comply with our DEI code. Okay. I don't want it to be just window dressing. I actually do want to try to look in that space. It would give us a year to look in that space.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And try to find some people, and I can help on that.
Okay, thanks for the input. Then move the next item, which is critical, is our audited financials. We have on the call Brett and Alejandra, which need to be elevated to be able to speak. Nelly? Okay, Brett and Alejandra are from Vicente and Brinker. You have draft financials in your packet. They sent me final ones on Friday, but they're unchanged. They still show as draft here. And this action is recommended to the board. Brett will speak and go through his required communications to this committee. And then after we adjourn the meeting, he is available and we have a room available for up to 2 board members or 2 committee members to be on a call with them to discuss staff and things that are in a closed session that are offline and not public. Any questions about it before we jump in? Okay, Brett, I think this is your meeting now.
Thank you, Andy. Good morning, everybody. Good to be back once again. We don't have a slideshow for today, but we do have one prepared for the board.
We did.
Any public
No, we
comment?
we did public comment.
We did
We're
before.
good.
For that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brett.
Sorry.
That's okay. We do have one for the board meeting next week, but I will run through with the highlights. Please feel free to interrupt with any questions. Thought it went smoothly, and we have no items to report, but we'll talk about what we did here today in brief, and then give a similar presentation to the full board meeting next week. My name is Brett Bradford. We're currently working with from Vicente and Brinker. We're currently working with several CCAs throughout the state, and I was lucky to have my associate Alejandra Schaefer as the engagement manager who headed up the team this year. There's Ellie. So the audit is complete. As I mentioned, we report an unmodified opinion, which means that based on our audit, the financial statements are materially accurate. And we noted no significant deficiencies or material weakness in internal control. Both of those are good things. So management is responsible for preparing the financial statements and establishing the system of internal control. So that's Andy's team, and Maher is a big part of that team as well. That's distinguished from our role as the auditor. We are independent from that financial statement preparation process. Pardon me. So we perform the audit independent of the financial statements, and we receive the financial statements from Andy and his team. And at a high level, we perform our audit by considering the risks of material misstatement in the financial statements, considering internal controls relevant to the financial statements, performing tests of year-end balances based on the results of our risk assessment, and evaluating the adequacy of disclosures, which are made in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles for governmental entities. The significant areas of focus are, the biggest area of focus is revenue recognition and the timing of revenue recognition. So we look at accounts receivable as well as accrued revenue, which is revenue earned but not yet billed. We test a sample of customer billings. We relate total cash received during the year to revenue recognized during the year. We look at cash received subsequent to year end and relate it back to accounts receivable. And we review revenue recognition through year end and the method for determining accrued revenue. Second major area of focus is cash. That's addressed relatively easily by sending confirmations directly to the financial institutions. And then accrued cost of electricity is the other side of that equation. We want to make sure that all of the costs that were incurred that relate to revenue recognized during the year are also recognized in the financial statements so that the operating results are accurate. We review subsequent bills from electricity providers and cash payments to make sure that that accrued costs of electricity number recognized at year end is complete. We look at accrued rec expense. We look at supplier security deposits, review contracts, and determine the completeness of the amounts recorded. And then lastly, we also look at the financial statement disclosures and make sure they are complete and without bias. So the next few items here are part of the required communications. We also will send out a letter, which I just signed, that puts this all in writing and meets our communication requirement with the board. But again, if you have any questions right now, please feel free to interrupt. Significant accounting policies of PCE throughout the periods audited appear appropriate and consistently applied. No alternative treatments of accounting principles for material items in the financial statements were discussed with management. We did not propose any adjustments to the financial statements. We have not identified any significant or unusual transactions or applications of accounting principles where a lack of authoritative guidance exists. There have been no disagreements with management concerning the scope of our audit, application of accounting principles, or the basis for management's judgments on any significant matters. And we have not encountered any difficulties in dealing with management during the performance of our audit. That concludes my prepared remarks and is basically the same thing that I'll be presenting to the board next week. Can I answer any questions?
Does anyone have, do any of the committee members have a question about the audit? Seems very straightforward. Anyone? No, seems very straightforward. That's fantastic. Great. I want to thank our audit team for the good work that they do. And yes, we're happy to, is this our last item on the agenda? Okay, so we can go to a different room if we want, or, which is no big deal, or call, or we could excuse staff. If staff wants to just step out for 1 minute, staff and.
Yeah, but then you have,
Oh,
you can't have the other two board members, two other committee, that's why we're gonna have to go in the other room and do a
okay,
separate
but are we
call.
done? So could Leslie just,
It's not just Leslie, it's also, it's a chance for them to have private conversations,
Okay.
and this is not really a private room.
okay,
The
okay,
bathrooms are here, the
yeah,
doors open,
okay, that's fine. I gotcha.
But do we adjourn the meeting and then go?
Yeah.
and then they go to that room over there.
Okay, so you guys just hang on for 1 second, please.
Yep.
All right, so do you need, you don't need official motion or anything from us?
What we want is an official action to recommend approval by the board.
So I would say that we make a motion, or someone makes a motion to recommend that the audit be accepted by the board of directors, predicated on finding no additional problematic situation after we have our private meeting with them. So whenever, just to, so everybody understands, when you do an audit like this, usually what happens is we're all in person, and then we excuse everybody, and the two people, or the chair of finance and one other person, or you two, it doesn't really matter, I can send you two off so we can get ready for the next meeting, it's all good. You basically then sit down with the audit team and say, is there anything that you found irregular? Was staff easy to work with? Was there anything you should know? Gives them the opportunity. If there's something they don't want to present in front of the staff, that they can then have a private opportunity to convey any concerns directly to the audit and finance committee. We've never had a problem. They've always said nothing. Everything's been good, but I have been on audit and finance committees where in fact people have said, yes, your staff is not doing this and this and this and this. And it was very helpful. So it's super important to have this little bit.
And a chance for them to express concerns about staff quality or staff
Responsiveness.
integrity or responsiveness or anything like that, that they might not say, wouldn't affect the audit financials, and might not say in a public meeting.
Okay. Okay, so can I have that kind of a recommendation?
Sorry, just want to make sure, did we do public comment?
Oh, yes, thank you, Carlos.
Never said that before.
Are there any members of the public who want to comment on the audit? All right, Nellie, see none? Okay, anyone here, member of the public who want to comment? Okay, great.
So I'll move, unless Marty wants to do it, I'll move that that we recommend that the board of directors approve the audited financial statements for fiscal year 2022-2023 at our next board meeting.
Okay, predicated on.
Predicated on everything coming out well on this outside conversation between the two of us.
Can I, sorry. Putting that, and maybe this is a question for Jen, putting that language in the resolution, we can do that. And that's.
We don't need
I don't
to.
know that you need it
No,
because.
we don't need it,
If,
that's fine.
if there really was some
That would
point,
come,
you would bring it up in the,
yeah, we would still have the audited financial statement approved.
right, and you would have the chance to
Yes,
pull it from
yes.
consent and have a discussion with the
Yes.
full board.
Okay.
Concerns you first.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that maybe we need just to restate and simplify the approval. And then if there's a problem, we can come back.
Thank you, Jen, that's great, okay. All right, then we will amend the motion to, wait, second, sorry, Leslie, that like remote thing is hard. Raise your hand.
No, I'm
all right.
following, don't worry.
Roll call vote, please.
Okay, and just to confirm
Right.
the motion.
The motion that I propose is on the
As is.
slides, as is.
So to recommend the board approve the audited financial statements for fiscal year 2022-2023. Sherry?
Got it, okay. Burlingame,
Yes.
East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Yes.
Portola Valley, San Bruno.
Yes.
Your motion passes.
Great, I'm gonna excuse myself from this meeting because I'm old in it and I would like some other people to have an opportunity to. So Leslie, if you want to stay on Zoom, you can, we can re-invite you, or Carlos and Marty can just do
Up to two.
it, just to
Whatever.
do.
Up
So
to
this
two.
is-
I'm happy having Carlos and Marty do it if they're, since they're in the same room. If they're both
Two,
available.
because there's, sorry, up to two because there's 5 members of the committee,
Yeah,
so.
we don't want to have.
And then Brett, there's, Nellie sent you a separate call-in information, right? Yeah.
Okay,
So, Donna, I was just gonna defer to you and say maybe you and Marty should do it. I mean, I think it's important that, you've had more experience on audits than I have.
sure,
So
I'm happy to
if you
do it,
wouldn't mind, maybe
No
the two of you
problem.
guys and then.
no problem. Okay,
Talk to you in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Brett.
you just want time for dessert, for breakfast dessert that I brought.
What's that?
Sorry, really quick, the other meeting invite for this next for the one-on-one or two-on-one is at 10 o'clock. Should I pop on there right now onto
We can
that?
do it right now.
Pop on now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was that your
Yeah,
motion?
No, we need to adjourn this meeting.
Yes.
Officially.
So, I'd like to have a motion to, no, we don't, we need a motion, no, okay, no
Just-
motion to adjourn, the meeting is adjourned. And we'll step into the, subcommittee meeting and we will, be back at 10 o'clock for the executive committee.
It's in the bar room down there, and Nellie, can you go?
Yep, I will take everyone over. Bye.
Thank you,
everyone.
Leslie,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.